So is the stock market crash over? Well, every time we try to predict this, the market surprises us and does the complete opposite of what we have to say. So I'm just going to say this out there. No, the stock market crash is not over. Hopefully that reverses it and starts moving higher. But guys, seriously, what I do want to talk about today is I want to jump into some charts. I want to talk to you about some technicals that I see that could be signaling what's going to happen with the market here. I also want to talk about some other indicators that I watch and why I watch them, what it tells me. And maybe these things will signal to us that maybe yes, we have bottomed, or maybe we have a little bit more downside to go. But what I do also want to provide is both sides of the story. Typically, I just look at one side, and I think that's not the right way to go. So what I'll do in this video is we'll first talk about why the market could have bottomed here and we're starting to move higher now. And then we'll also look at some data that could signal that maybe the market is not yet done selling off. So if you appreciate this content, you find any value in this video, a like goes a long way, and subscribe if you're brand new to the channel as well, because we do stock market videos every day on this channel. Anyways, guys, with that being said, let's jump into screen recording and talk further about this. Okay, so jumping over here to the screen, let's start off with the fear greed index. This is something that I like to look at every so often. And whenever there's a little bit of uncertainty in the markets, this thing gives me an idea of what's really going on, what investor sentiment is like, and it just kind of gives you an overall view of the market that you don't really get if you're just an individual investor like myself. So interestingly, a year ago is when we had the 2020 market crash, almost to the date. And this is when you can see that fear was pretty much at its lowest levels ever. I believe it hit even 1 at one point, which is like the most amount of fear you can possibly get. But right now, today, we're sitting at around a 56, which relatively is not too bad. And we're kind of a little bit in the greed zone. Now, if you scroll down a bit lower, you'll see a bit more information here historically of how things are. You can see back in 2020, March is when we hit that low. It was pretty much March 23rd, and then things started moving higher. Back at the end of 2018, we also had some sort of market crash. Fear definitely entered the market back then, but then things recovered. But then ever since, you can see, ever since last year's bottom, we've kind of had a few periods where there's been fear. Again, here there's been fear, but so far, we're holding up okay. We're sitting at around a pretty decent level, nothing too concerning in my opinion. I was a bit concerned over here when we were getting to some extreme greed levels, but as of today, guys, things don't look too bad. So what I'll be doing going forward is just kind of keeping a close eye on this. I know there's a lot of volatility in the market right now, especially with tech stocks, high growth stocks. So I want to see if this starts to get back to that extreme greed level, because that'll signal to me, okay, investors are just pouring money back in. Investors are just buying up whatever they can, and that's typically when I start getting a little bit uncomfortable if it's mostly retail investors. But on the other hand, if we start selling off and we start getting into this red zone here with extreme fear, you can bet that I will be doubling down on my positions. The second thing I want to show you guys is the technical setup. Now, some of you believe in technical, some of you don't, but regardless, the facts speak for themselves. Stocks do follow some sort of technical rules. And you can see here, this is the QQQ, the NASDAQ, and for the most part, this one respects the 50 moving average and the 100 moving average. 200 as well, but you don't get to see that test very often. Back in 2019, we did test it, but you can see there's periods of time where we don't come down and test that for quite a while. Now here we can see we've tested the 100 moving average twice last year. And then we had this massive run, and then now we've come back and tested it again. We actually broke below this, which kind of signaled to me this was a bit of a bearish sign. But then we started recovering, and so far, guys, we are recovering quite well. What I do want to point out is this pattern that I see here where, break down, test, break up, test again, and then move higher. Break down, up, test again, move higher. Break down, up, test again. We tested the 100 again last week, and now we're getting to move higher. This signals to me that we could possibly have bottomed here. And when I look at some other charts, right, if I look at stocks like Tesla, for example, you can see this came down to a very technical level, the 200 moving average, pretty much to the T. We bounced off of this, and now we're sitting up again. Amazon, this is another one. We came down, broke below it. We're kind of hovering around there, but now we're starting to move higher again. Apple, here's another one. came down pretty close to it, and now we're starting to move higher again. And let's look at Microsoft. Microsoft as well. We came down, tested this level, which is a very strong level for Microsoft, as you can see historically. Bounced off of it, and now we're starting to move higher again. When I see these big names that pretty much move the market, especially the NASDAQ, when I see them come down to technical levels like this and healthy technical levels like this, test it and start moving higher, it tells me that there are buyers at these levels. It tells me that this is a healthy retracement of these stocks, and it tells me that these stocks are getting ready to move higher based on their technicals. And it's not just these big tech stocks that show us this, guys. You can see even Peloton, for example, smaller stock, it's come down to a very technical level. Palantir, this is a fan favorite, come down to a very technical level. Neo, come down to its 200 moving average, another technical level. A lot of stocks have come down to their technical levels back in early March. They tested it and they've bounced higher. Now, will this hold? That's still kind of up in the air. That's kind of what we're trying to predict here. But if I'm just looking at what's going on today, what happened in the last couple of weeks, where the stocks found support, things are looking good. But now I do want to share both sides of this story because, you know, we can look at charts all day. We can look at fear greed index. We can look at all of these things and say, hey, we've bottomed. It's time to move higher. I don't think we're completely out of the woods yet. A couple other things I want to point out to you guys. So one was this. I actually saw this from a post in my VIP group. One of the members posted this in here. And this tells me that there was a lot of money poured into the stock market, $56.8 billion, a record amount, as stimulus checks arrived. But what's interesting is, even with all that money pouring in, if we look at the Qs, it didn't do all that much. You would think with 56 billion, this thing would rocket higher, right? Like that's a huge amount of money coming in. But no, not really. It kind of just, you know, up a little, down a little, kind of moving sideways a bit. And what this tells me, my theory, is that maybe institutions are still not buying. Institutions are really the ones that move the markets. They're the ones with tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars that can move stocks and move the overall market. So it tells me that institutions are not really buying up at least tech stocks or QQQ type stocks. On the other hand, if you look at the S&P, yeah, okay, this did look like it saw some sort of inflow. It had a nice bounce up. Dividend stocks, value stocks, these guys saw a lot of money flowing in and stock moved up higher significantly. The Dow type stocks also saw a nice bounce. You know, I've looked at stocks like Caterpillar. This thing has been dominating. 3M, this is a stock that I hold. This has seen a lot of money come in. It's been moving a lot higher. Starbucks, another one of my favorite stocks. This has been doing quite well in recent weeks. And you can kind of go through the list of all these recovery type stocks that have done decently well, even though the NASDAQ took a dump the last 2 weeks. But what I will say that is, even with all of this money flooding in from the stimulus, we didn't move all that much higher on the Qs. So just be cautious here. Big money, to me, still seems to be sitting out right now. You'll be able to tell when they start coming back into the market because we'll start rallying quite higher. Today was a pretty good move here. Maybe we continue this, and maybe today was the beginning of, you know, these large institutions flooding money back in. I did notice that on Friday, Amazon actually saw a good amount of money come in, close to $1 billion of net inflows come in. And maybe this is the reversal for Amazon finally. But we'll have to wait and see, guys, how this plays out. Now, the other thing, of course, that we need to discuss is the 10-year Treasury. This has really been the story for the last few weeks. This has been, you know, poised as the culprit for all of the volatility going on in the markets, the crash that's happening. Because as these rates increase, investors start getting a bit uneasy and they sell off their tech and growth stocks. Now, while this has been moving up higher in the last 5 days, you can see how things are. We spiked. Stocks are down. Now we're starting to go lower. Stocks are starting to go back higher. But guys, what I do want to point out to you is that you look at the 1 year, you're like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. You zoom out, this is pretty much a nothing burger. This is not anything significant to me. You can see we've had many periods of time where we've come down and retraced a bit higher, right? And the market always tries to throw hissy fits when this happens. And we're doing one of those again right now. but I'm not really concerned. I don't think this is really an issue. Sure, we may move a bit higher. Maybe we hit 2.5%. Are we gonna get back to like 15%? I highly doubt it, guys. We haven't seen those levels in 30, 40 years. I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon. And to me, the trend is still pretty clear. It's still a downward trend. We have retracements, but we are still heading lower. So I think sooner or later the market will come to terms with this and they'll say, okay, 10-year Treasury, meh, who cares? That's typically how things go. There's been countless of news events every single year. You know, we're going to have some sort of issue with China. We're going to have some sort of issue with whatever it is. You know, the yield curve is inverting. There's so many things that happen every single year that causes the market to have some volatility, that causes stocks to sell off. But the key is to just weather through that storm and buy great businesses like Amazon, for example. So in summary, is the stock market crash over? I think we have compelling reasons as to why it may be done, but we also have some reasons as to why there may be more selling to come. Now, like we saw, the NASDAQ is the only one that's still hurting. The Dow, the S&P, they're doing fine. So it may not be a crash depending on our portfolio, but for those of us that have a lot of money in growth stocks or tech stocks, we've definitely felt the pain the last month or so. Guys, I'm with you on this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts based on the information I provided you as to, do you think the stock market crash or correction or sell-off is done here, or do you think we still have more downside to go? Let me know in the comments down below. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to invest positively, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.